Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
Woohoo! So for you guys, you're probably like, yeah, you're back. We actually haven't recorded in a few weeks. We were just joking that we've forgotten how to do it. So we'll see how today goes.
Podcast?
What is that? Yeah. But what's really fun is Keaton and I got to see each other in person.
Yes, it was fun.
So that was
Our
fun.
kids met. It was adorable.
That was so cute.
Yes. It was a lot of fun, for sure. Can't wait again.
I know. We live too far away from each other. So where we left off last time, I think, was Constantine. So we were talking about Constantine, the Keanu Reeves version, which obviously is very different than other versions. So I was thinking just in general about Constantine and storylines I know him from, and thinking back to Agatha all along and thinking about our list of characters. And I know part of what we want to do is like, hey, how would you do therapy with these different types of monsters and things? So I figured we should do like hey, what are the things to consider for therapy when you've got someone who uses magic? Which, I mean, what they're called varies. And honestly, I have no idea what the difference between like a wizard and a sorcerer and a mage and all that stuff is. So essentially, we'll just talk about people that use and know of a world of magic and how that might change the dynamics for therapy.
Well, absolutely. Just because, I mean, even just considering magic. All right. So when you said that, my first thought was, ooh, they're not going to have to pay a copay. Good for them. But then after that, I just thought about the fact that like when it comes to those that use magic, a lot of the times it's something that they don't have permission to do as far as who it's being done on. Like magic is weird because it's like it's one of those things like if you're talking about like Doctor Strange, he only uses it to help people or to save people versus Agatha.
Agatha or Loki or
if Agatha, like I'm gonna be honest, if Agatha is in therapy, it should probably also be behind bars. Like if we're being honest.
So if Agatha were my client, I would have some concerns, probably. So this is actually a really great point. One of the things, because we've talked about therapy and superheroes a few different times on the podcast, of course. And so one of the things we talked about is, do you know that they're a superhero or not? Are you working with just their alter ego? Are you working with the superhero? Are you working with both? That can drastically change the picture. And so with this, I think once again, how much the therapist is aware of and involved in the magic world is important too. So honestly, if you were a therapist to someone who is in the magic world and you have no idea the magic world exists, I don't think you're going to be that effective providing therapy unless they're coming to you and you know they're talking to you like it's the non-magical like normal version. But like honestly though, it'd probably be best if you had some sort of discussion, shall we say, during therapy about when is magic appropriate or not appropriate within the therapeutic setting. Because a person could, for example, I mean, like, take Loki. He could literally create an entire false situation right there in front of you that you think you're interacting, and you might be interacting with a mirage. So, yeah, and Agatha, she plays a little fast and loose with the ethics of magic. So like, it'd be tricky.
All right, so in this, there's definitely a given that these are people that either want or have to be in therapy. They can't just magic us out of it, right? In
And
this,
and Ag
or lie to us.
it would take a lot for Agatha to go to therapy, I think. I think she'd be one that, yeah, it's more likely that she would have to do it. Although she gets closer to a place where she's might be open to some introspection by the end of the season of Agatha All Along. So she's like getting closer to a place where she might want to reflect and review where she's at and readjust how she's looking at things. But yeah, there's a trust. There's a trust involved in the therapeutic relationship that goes both ways. And one of the things that we're trusting is that neither one of us is going to harm the other one. And I mean, we might hurt each other's feelings or things like that, but those larger levels of hurt, like this therapist is not going to manipulate me. They're doing this to help me be able to improve. And then vice versa. This client's going to be open and honest as best they can and also not harm me in any way because, realistically, like, yeah, any human being technically could harm another human being. And you're touching on some vulnerable, touchy things. So you're trusting the client to let you know if you're hitting on something a little too delicate and need to reassess so that things don't go into a tricky scenario sometimes. So
Right.
yeah, Agatha, you could get into some tricky scenarios. I would
Well,
agree with that.
and well, the thing is too, what's different with magic users, it's not one of those situations where they are like Superman, where they're walking around on eggshells, hoping. Majority of the ones we know, it's like they know what they're doing. They have control over the magic, and they're also human. A lot of them are actually
Yeah,
human. And so I think it's one of those things where even if they went to therapy, it could be one of those situations where they're a magician or they're a magic user or whatever. And therapist never even knows because
exactly. Yep,
that because
absolutely.
that magic user still has jealousy issues,
Mhm.
still has boomer parents like that. Like it's still they
Yep.
go
Or they
through
are the boomer parent.
or
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They still go through the
Absolutely.
exact same stuff.
And so that's why, when I was saying the therapist wouldn't necessarily need to be in the magic world. Um, there would need to be a certain understanding, or at least for the magic user, they need to keep themselves honest probably in terms of how is this magic being used within therapy, because I'm sure it would be tempting to use it in some way in therapy at some point. I mean, how could it not be? And so of course there's that piece, but you're absolutely right. So most people who are using magic, I mean, it depends. So, there are demigods or wizards that it seems like, that might be their species or their variations, but absolutely. So I'm thinking of the Dresden Files, and he's like a detective wizard. It's one of my favorite examples of someone who uses magic.
Been
Uh,
told to read those.
oh, it's so good. You gotta read Dresden Files. There's also like a one season show. I don't know if you can even find it anywhere anymore, but there's a one season show that's pretty great. But it's also a really great representation of like he's a normal guy, but magic really makes his life super quirky. It's a like buddy cop detective kind of show. Yeah, book series and everything. Yeah, you gotta read it. But yeah, I totally agree with you that a lot of things with magic users probably would translate really well and the magic. So where the magic would maybe be helpful in coming up in therapy though is magic's one of their skill sets, one of their abilities, one of the tools that they have in order to cope with stressful things, and affects probably how they react in different scenarios. Maybe they use it in certain ways to try and maneuver different scenarios for better or worse. And so it could be helpful to have that knowledge because just like, I don't know, a lot of times when we're working with someone where we try and use their strengths, their abilities to help them maneuver what's going on. So, as a therapist, I tend to be pretty good at communicating with people. Or someone who works a lot with machines might be really good at, a different kind, like how are things built and how do you break them down? And so, different skill sets, people are going to use them, they're going to generalize them out to help them manage in their lives. The magic has to come into play with that. So there would be limits. There'd be limits to what therapy could help with. The person who uses magic would have to be able to generalize what they learn from the therapist.
I'd
If
have to
they're
want to be there.
well, yeah, they'd have to want to be there, but what I'm thinking about is if the therapist doesn't know about the magic,
Hmm.
the person who uses magic has to be really good at generalizing out what the therapist is talking about into their magic use and be able to pretty independently say, okay, let me take these skills and these things we're talking about and let me also translate it into how I use my magic. So, there are breathing skills, or there's, ways to communicate better with people, or there's ways we can adjust our thinking about different things. Same thing with magic. I'm sure there are a variety of different ways you can use magic for better or worse to try and help you maneuver situations. If you're not talking about it in therapy, you got to be able to generalize it yourself outside.
Yeah, and I think you would have to definitely zoom out at a bigger picture. And I feel like with um, a magic user being in therapy with them, it would have to be a lot more philosophical, since a lot of the situations that are completely out of a normal human's control might not be out of theirs. The same way
So,
that,
yeah,
like, Doctor Strange, it's like, oh, I can just use the time stone and try it again.
right.
Or I can just make them forget that that happened. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
it would have to be,
Mhm.
I feel like therapy with a magician, it would have to be a lot of philosophy and a lot of ethics.
Yes. So
Um,
you're
yeah.
exactly hitting on the types of things that I was like, so, okay, granted, you could probably get away with the therapist not knowing about the magic. It would be so helpful for the therapist to know about the magic. Yes, these are the exact kinds of scenarios that I was thinking about, where it's the rules of the world that we play by, where a lot of times in therapy you're trying to help someone accept the way things have been or process things that have happened. Exactly. There might be outs, a way to get out of it with magic. Then again, sometimes you get stuck in a cycle with magic because you're desperately trying to fix it, like Doctor Strange, right? So we've seen scenarios with him where he's desperately trying to change an outcome and it does not work out well for that version of Doctor Strange. So there are absolutely thing options with magic that drastically, I would say drastically expand just what the possibilities are in life,
Mhm.
and so it makes sense that they would need a place to sit and process that, and like you said, just the ethical components of things. What is okay for me to do? What's maybe not okay for me to do? How do I maneuver all of those things? I think earlier you mentioned if they're manipulating something and it's affecting the other people around them, they could essentially be in a different reality than the people that they're with, or they're in control of things in a way that other people aren't in control, and these would be nuances that a therapist would have to adjust to in some ways. But yeah, there would be a lot of like ethical stuff to work through. And I would also imagine that if you are someone who uses magic, you might be you might struggle during the times that you don't have control,
Mhm.
because you have more locus of control. You have more things in life that you can manipulate and change
Mhm.
compared to the non magical person. So when you don't have control, it probably is that much more brutal because you're not used to it. Usually you have the magic option and it gives you a lot of choice. So yeah, there'd be some super cool stuff to work through in therapy.
Well, and also just I think that you would have to talk to them in a sense of, hey, maybe you should just approach this without magic. Maybe instead of using your magic to undo this, you have a deeper conversation with this person about
Mhm.
why this all happened, right? Instead of just, oh, I can just edit, undo, abracadabra, or whatever it is. Instead of that,
Mhm.
hey, maybe you sit down and talk with them and have a conversation, right?
So this is an interesting question too of I was talking about like a skill set or an ability. In some ways, it might be more of like almost a sixth sense, or you know what I mean? Like almost like a sense. You've got sight, you've got smell, and potentially given the character, it might just be kind of a natural part of their process or not. And so that would make it harder to do what you're talking about. But I agree with you where if magic was available, who of us would not take the shortcuts? Who of us would not take the opportunity to play something back, try it again?
Yeah, I'd never
Who
sit in traffic again.
who of us would yeah, who of us wouldn't try and make our lives simpler in some ways or this, that, and the other? But there are things that are affected by that. So don't get me wrong, it's great to have second chances and third chances and fourth chances, but you're still living through all of those. So what does that mean for you that you're living through all of those and you're rinsing and repeating? Also, do you end up in a catch-22 where you can't stop? You could have more OCD actually. You could have more levels of like compulsive use of magic or high anxiety and perfectionism and this desire for high levels of control, a lot of like generalized anxiety or focus on finding the perfect outcome. So you could end up being able to replay, redo things to the point where you just can't stop because what if there's something better? Or the magic is required in order for you to be able to maneuver different situations or to be able to do something. So it makes me think of like I think it's Wally, where people have become so reliant on technology that when the guy comes out of stasis or whatever,
Hmm.
he can't walk because he's not used to it anymore. So if you use magic too much, some of your other skill sets might atrophy. Another example for that is they're discovering that if you're not careful with how you use I think
Hmm.
AI can be a really great comparison too, where if you're skipping some steps and you're letting something else do it for you, then your brain actually starts becoming less capable of doing certain other thought processes and things because you're not using it, right?
Yeah.
So there's that risk with magic. So I agree with you that there could be times where suggesting not using magic in certain scenarios or easing back on it, maybe even having some exposure of, hey, let's see what it's like without being able to use that. Or maybe times where you're purposely not using it so that you're still using other types of muscles, so to speak. But in some cases, that could be like telling someone, hey, go around and pretend like you can't hear for the day. So it would depend on how magic is experienced in for that
Yeah,
character. Because if it's more of like a
absolutely.
sense type of thing, that might make less sense. But you
It
never know.
also, I feel like it's also dependent on their place in the world, right?
Mm,
Like, therapy's not going to be very different in the Harry Potter universe just because everyone uses magic there. It's just an
mm,
everyday thing. And instead of guns, they just have the kill curse, right? Like it's there, but so is the breakups with the girlfriend and the
mm-hmm,
loss of parents and everything is exactly the same versus something like Agatha All Along, where like witches are very rare, or Doctor Strange, where it's like he is the sorcerer supreme, or Constantine and Zatanna, like in that world, it's
mm-hmm.
like they're a very rare breed. And
Yeah.
so,
Which, yeah, some of that is important to keep in mind too. Being a rare breed is hard. And I totally agree with you that I think what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is there are some where it's just the way of life for everyone. And
mhm,
so in some ways it's much more that everyday kind of therapy because
yeah,
it's just a part. But if you're more of those rare breeds, then there might be these like special factors to it that come up because you're maneuvering the world very differently than a large chunk of the rest of the population. There's, I think, in some ways more ethical considerations because of that. And also probably a lot of, I mean, not to mention like loneliness and feeling disconnected. There could be like higher trends of like narcissism within people with magic if they're more of like the special breed, but this
yeah,
is kind of
absolutely.
yeah, but I remember when we talked about Homelander one time we were like, is it narcissism if you're actually, have these capabilities? So you'd be dancing a line. There's a time
Just thinking about him going, I am better.
So don't get me wrong. People can go back and listen to that episode where we talk about Homelander and narcissism. But I think you'd be more at risk of narcissism, and then at the same time, also you'd just generally be more at risk of coming off as narcissistic, just because you do in fact have skill sets that other people don't have that
Mhm.
really do open the world to you in a lot of new ways that most people can't get close to.
One thing too is, and you touched on it before, is the therapist not knowing about them using magic. And it kind of reminds me of when we talked about Lucifer
Mm.
and how for the longest time he would talk to the therapist, let her know, oh, by the way, I'm the devil. She's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Why are you acting like she approached it from the sense of this is a person and I'm just going to completely ignore all the devil
She
stuff.
approached it like, you know what? There's a psychosis process going on here. She did a great job working with it. I'm glad you brought that up. Man, I forgot about that episode. Yeah, that totally a similar thing could happen here
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
where, yeah, sometimes people have strong senses of superstition or believe they have magical abilities or other things. And if they show up in therapy, we're thinking of, okay, there's some sort of psychosis process happening. How do we help someone maneuver this so that they're still able to, function within the world around them and all of that? But yeah, you'd be missing the boat
yeah.
quite a
Well,
bit with one of these guys.
and I think that the biggest difference between standard superheroes going to therapy versus magic users
Mm,
is the fact that they actually have the ability to manipulate other people. Superman can punch things and throw things, and Batman can fight crime, but like he can't change the past. He can't hypnotize
mm,
someone into doing
yeah.
stuff, right? Like
Or
like
or change things also, manipulate objects into other objects or yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. I mean, some
It's a
mutants and
lot
stuff
more
like
power.
yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot more power. It's like, honestly, it kind of reminds me of like if Professor X had a therapist. It's like, hey, was it right for you to just stop their brain from working right then? Like,
Yeah.
I know you can, but should you have
But
done that
should you?
without
Yeah.
permission? Right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You know what it
it's such a thin line, like ethically with
yeah.
magic users.
And what it's making me think of is there's actually a, a lot of times in therapy I'm talking with folks about this struggle where you can you can want things to be different all you want, whether it's a situation or how a person is interacting with you in some way or whatever it might be. And we can influence the world around us, but we can't force people or force things to do exactly what we want, except in certain circumstances. Now, I guess if you wanted to get technical, person could get real violent and threaten people and da 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 da. And so, I guess technically speaking, that can happen. But we talk about it from this like framework of, you know what? At the end of the day, you can do everything you can to influence a situation, but there are a lot of things that are out of our control, and that would be less true with the magic, but it once again be kind of a similar thing where it's like, okay, technically, I guess you could take take a gun and put it to someone's head and like make them make a change that they've been refusing to do. So I guess there are these extremes in humanity where technically you could force it, but is that really going to get you where you want to go? Is that really taking you to the place that you're looking for? What are the consequences of that? There's a reason there are all these reasons that that doesn't tend to be the way we go with things.
Yeah,
Um,
because
and
I'm
so with magic, you'd have to work through similar stuff. Yeah.
absolutely because I mean the thing is you have to make sure like their therapist, it's quite a weight on their therapist's shoulders because it's like you have to make sure that Wanda continues coming to see you instead of
Mm,
taking people out of their lives and creating an alternate reality that makes her happy, right? Like you have to
yeah.
like, yes, you can do that, but you shouldn't do
Yeah.
that, right?
That's another intriguing question. So that's getting me thinking too more about like the therapeutic ethics of confidentiality. depending on the state, there's different levels of this, but I mean, essentially, if there's something to suggest that someone's going to be violent, and particularly if they're going to try and kill somebody, in most states, you're expected to break that confidentiality and put safety first.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, things get tricky with magic. So there's a lot of really, really awful things that you could do to people with magic if you wanted to. And in the magical world, these things are not seen as rare or strange or out of the ordinary if you're a magic user. But once again, like, especially if you had the magic user who's like, it's not within the magical world, because if you're within the magical world, the rules have changed for everyone.
Mhm.
Right? So the therapist probably has like a change in like the ethical structure and confidentiality and everything that weaves in what to do with different magical situations.
Mhm.
So in that situation, probably the fact that everyone's working within the magical world helps us all know how to maneuver it. But if you're in the framework of most of us are not magical and you're one of the special beings, that's really complicated for therapy. If you've got someone, let's say like Agatha, that would be super tricky. Or I mean, like, for argument's sake, let's talk about Constantine. You know, what if someone's working against a demon? I have not been trained in what is okay or not okay in terms of people's treatment of of demonic creatures who are human creatures but not human creatures. Like, things would get complicated really fast, and I'm not sure. I mean, hopefully you could find some people to consult with. Like,
Thin line.
you yeah, I'd need some like specialty training, I
Well,
think.
normally, like in the DC universe, I know that normally they bring in Dr. Fate
Mm,
for stuff like that, who
yeah.
is one of, if not the most powerful
Yep.
magic user.
Helps if you're powerful too.
Right. Right. It's kind of like, I mean, like we're talking about Harry Potter. I mean, you get sent to the principal's office there. It's Dumbledore. Like, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
put my wand down. This is
Well, and
clearly
so
the
that's the
better.
thing, right?
Yeah.
If everyone's working on the same playing field, that simplifies a lot of things in terms
Yes.
of a therapy would be like you were saying before, therapy would probably look pretty similar.
Mhm.
But if the therapist doesn't use magic and the client does, especially if you're in a world that's a lot of non-magical people and you've got a few that it would totally get complicated. Um And I mean, sometimes when you're doing treatment, you also are kind of holding your breath like, okay, let's see where this goes. Let's hope that it goes in the right direction, because you can also be so concerned about safety that you increase risk.
Mhm.
So, what I mean by that is, let's say you have someone who just has a lot of violent thoughts that come up for them all of the time. If you're so concerned about safety that they can't bring up thoughts that they have anyway, they've had them for so much time before they did therapy. It's just
Mhm.
something that's always there. But if you're so concerned about safety that you're reacting and responding each time and you're reporting it each time as if it's like an imminent safety issue, then that person's probably going to stop talking to you about it. And then they don't
Yeah.
have the opportunity to work through it. Right.
Yeah. They're not comfortable with, yeah, with you or trusting.
Right. So it's tricky because obviously things can get to a point where you need to act and react. So there's definitely that delicate balance. And I mean, once again, yeah, I think when you're working with someone with magic, you would just be holding your breath a little bit more. You
Mhm.
you have to really be looking at that balance between, okay, obviously we need to think about risk and safety and other people, and consulting where you can, consult, but also how do I make sure that this person has a place where they can talk these things through, so that hopefully they're less likely to use their magic in ways that are going to harm other people.
Right. Because you have to come at it from an angle of, okay, this is somebody who isn't necessarily stressed out by finances. This is somebody that isn't necessarily stressed out at work, right? There are,
Maybe. You
right.
never know, though.
I mean, a lot of the magicians, it's like, they're fine. They're doing, they're
Yeah, but not all of
they're not out here struggling and like Peter Parker, right? Like they,
Okay, maybe not Peter Parker level, but I mean,
I can't think
it
of a single broke
depends.
magician. That's all I'm saying. Like I can't, like no, they're
I mean,
sad. Yes, broke. Nope. I don't know. I can't think of a single magician right now with student loans. They're magicians. That would be magic users. That would be the first thing I did. No bills, none money. There it is. Like it would, but
but you got to
but
remember
they still have
though.
other problems.
You got to remember though, depending on which magic user you're talking about, they might work from different sets of rules and ethical principles and different kinds of things. So depending on the universe they're in, depending on just like a lot of the communities have certain things about like here are
Oh yeah,
things that are taboo or you're not supposed to do, and those are usually the things that are the difference between like the quote good and the quote bad. And I hear you though.
yeah.
I
They
hear you
deal in
though
like
that
rubies and
I I
souls.
I
And
hear you that the daily stressors are very different. So like let's take Dresden Files for example. So here's a fun one where one of the stressors he has to work with that a lot of people don't have to work with is because he uses magic, electronics and technology crap out around him all of the time.
it's funny.
Things are just constantly breaking around him that other people use all the time. So he would not be someone who could just, use a computer like everyone else. So a lot of the ones I've read, I don't know if there are any nowadays with the smartphones, but he that's a kind of a silly stressor that feels
Mhm.
relatable to us, but like he has to work around the world completely differently because of his magic. So you never know. But yeah, the daily stressors would probably be different. What matters to you, what doesn't matter to you would probably be different. But yeah, there would I think the biggest thing for therapy when it comes to the magic would just be how does the easy out affect things? And in some ways it just shifts and changes what you're worried about and what you're focused on. So instead of, I don't know, instead of worrying about the finances, you're maybe worrying about the ethics of magic, hopefully, in a way that most people, we don't have to worry about how we move about the world because we don't have these magical tendencies that could step all over everybody. But yeah, I think there would definitely be a higher risk of falling into the trap of not being able to let go. You keep looking for the perfect outcome, the easy outs, or how can I change this for the better? On the flip side, yeah, I mean, once again, who wouldn't wanna just be able to do a spell or snap your fingers or wave a wand and be able to just kinda poof, change something? That'd be pretty sweet.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/bat therapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.